he's been a good fill-in player, backup player, but this year really put his hand up to be a starting player. He's played multiple positions in our team. I think he's played every position at the back line, he's played down the half and in the ruck, so but he came to us as a half and really hasn't had too many opportunities over the last few years, especially with the opportunity he got his opportunity, and I just thought he lifted to another level. He's been one of our form players over the last 6 to 8 weeks. Which has been really important, mate. I think he's been an outstanding player.
comes from Rachel, who's kind of asking the question that I think a lot of people have had in their minds watching the Olympics over the last week or so. Is top-level sport healthy?
Have you got? What's your overall build? What's your overall height? And they will say to you, well, your best sport here is cycling rather than shot putting or something. And there's plenty of examples of people who switched sport simply because of their physiological profile. So it's your physical makeup and your muscle makeup in terms of your fiber types, fast and slow twitch, etc. is largely genetic.
And then not every person with natural ability is good enough to get all the way to the Olympics.
Well, good enough is probably the wrong phrase to use, I might say. So I think it's more that there are some examples you might grow up in poverty and you just don't have the opportunity to take it further in terms of training. You might be more interested in academic pursuits and the notion of spending your whole life training day in, day out in the hope that you might get to the Olympics does not appeal to you. So there are lots of social and psychological and economic circumstances which determine whether or not somebody gets as far as the Olympics.
Yeah, and I think it's worth kind of calling out the fact that the goal of top-level sport isn't health, it's performance.
That's absolutely right. And those, what we've just been talking about, are important caveats in terms of saying, well, is top-level sport good or bad for your health? Because the sort of person who gets there is not at all typical, even putting aside the physical attributes.
Right, but let's talk about the physical side of things. If we're just looking at, like, oh my gosh, Dawn, you watch those swimmers, and for starters, they're just so incredibly muscular, they move through the water so quickly, they've just got so much endurance, like all of the things that we aspire to if we are interested in health and fitness.
Yeah, and there have been some studies which have looked at the longevity and well-being and health and well-being of Olympic athletes over decades. And what they've shown is that on average, low risk of heart disease and low risk of cancer relative to your age. And you do live longer. Some people say maybe an average of 5 years longer. There are some exceptions. It depends on the sport a bit. So really aerobic sports like swimming and running, that's particularly true. Weightlifting is notorious for perhaps not being so true because the diet that some weightlifters take to actually increase their muscle bulk is not necessarily healthy. And the other issue is, do you continue with a higher level of physical activity or do you revert to a more sedentary lifestyle? And most Olympic athletes do continue with a higher level of physical activity. So overall, it's good.
I'm interested to pick up on something there. The cardiovascular benefits seem self-evident if you're doing a lot of aerobic training. What's with the cancer risk being lower?
Cancer risk is thought to be a combination of lower body fat, because body fat is a risk factor for cancer causation. And there are certain growth hormones which decrease with increasing exercise, which reduce your risk of cancer.
course, that's going to vary between athletes. But we talked on the health report just a couple of weeks ago about a study that showed that high-intensity interval training reduced the risk of dementia or cognitive decline in people, even if they hadn't continued with it. If they participated in a study where they did high-intensity interval training, they still had a benefit a few years on. So there is kind of like a long tail that comes with periods of your life where you do a lot of activity.
Yes, and here's where the difference is between, say, Olympic ultra elite athletes and the average person that participates in sport and does a lot of exercise. And that's the issue of intensity. And there's no question that if you do more than 150 minutes, probably up to about 300 minutes a week, that is progressively better for you. And the more intense that exercise, that is better for you. But there is a limit to it. And therefore, when you get to that super elite level, which gets you into the Olympics, you've probably maxed out on the long-term health benefits, but they're definitely there. The other issue, which I thought you were getting to, was if you're in a sport with a high level of injury, then that does affect your future prospects because you could be less likely to take physical activity because you're limited by your injuries.
Yeah, so, okay, you might have cardiovascular benefits that stop you from dying as young, but you might be living longer with an injury, like a musculoskeletal injury.
That's right. You may have knee arthritis. You may have had concussion, which is quite disabling, for example. And there's another really big caveat to all this. If you've done really well at Olympic sports, then it's quite likely that you're doing better socioeconomically. In other words, you're earning more. You've had sponsorship. You've had more opportunities because people like employing former Olympians into their companies and so on. And therefore, on average, you'd probably guess that Olympians are better off than the average person in the street. And the better off you are, the longer you live in good health. So it's a complicated story.
Yeah, and like you said, the chances of you getting to the Olympics in the first place probably also rested on whether you can afford to delay your other work until you'd sort of reach that level. So there's a lot of world stuff playing into this.
Yeah, not to mention the determination and persistence, which also will have an effect on your future behaviours. If you are a determined person, if you're persistent with things and you're resilient, that's going to be good for your health and well-being moving forward.
Right, so let's talk about the psychological side of health for people in the elite sports level. And like you say, we really lionise those ideas about determination, persistence, that single-mindedness that seems to be required for people to get to that really elite level. So is being an elite sports person good for your mental health or detrimental?
There's mixed evidence on this. When you look at the big studies here, it looks as though people on average at an elite sport level have the same kind of instance of depression and anxiety as the rest of the community. But it does vary according to circumstance and sport. So we know notoriously that gymnastics, particularly female gymnasts, also male gymnasts, can have disordered eating and eating disorders. We also know that across sports, you have vulnerable children and young people being coached by abusers. And that's
not always, but yeah, it does. You do hear about it a lot.
I hope they didn't apply always. But when the gymnastics was particularly in the headlines to do with that at the Tokyo Olympics, that can have a major impact. And you can have coaches who are not properly supervised. So these are big caveats. And also the psychological impact of spending a decade of your life training that, in fact, if you dissect out Olympic athletes, you can find much higher levels of depression and anxiety than the average person.
Right, in different sports, you mean?
Yes.
I mean, you do hear about them just at the short-term level, talking about condition, you've been working towards it. You've either done what you set out to do and achieved a medal, or you haven't, but you made it to the Olympics anyway. And then there's this letdown effect afterwards because what's it all for then?
That's right, what do? You've reached it, what's next? In some sports, they're pretty well organised with that they think through what is your career after sport. So, for example, rugby league and sports like that. Some of those teams really do think about their players' careers afterwards. So we get them clerkships in investment banks or other places, make sure they get education. It used to be better than it is now. It was much commoner in the past for people to have parallel careers when teams weren't fully professional. So that sort of care and attention to the future is really important. But it's a form of relevance deprivation syndrome when you just suddenly have this intense period of time which comes to an end, and unless politicians feel after they get thrown out of Parliament. That's what broadcasters feel when they retire. I'm very acutely aware of this syndrome.
That's why you're going to be broadcasting forever.
That's right, boring the audience, but bear with me. It's just protecting my mental health here.
I love that we were talking about Olympic sports people and all of a sudden we're talking about you, Norman. To sort of summarise then, like at the top level there does seem to be some real benefits to the intense training that these athletes do, and that there are some mental health potential pitfalls for people. For the average person who was looking at these bodies on their TV screen and kind of going like, is this what I should be aiming for? I think the big question with this sort of performance is sustainability. Like, these people have perfected their training so that they are reaching their absolute peak during a fortnight period over a 4-year lead up. It's called a peak because if you go over, it's downhill on the other side. Like, what's a sustainable level of physical activity for an average person who really wants to give their body the best?
In the end, you've got to decide that for yourself, what your own priorities are and what's available to you. Ideally, you aim for 150 minutes a week, 45 minutes most days of the week, and not get into a funk of just a couple of days where you can't. And if you're doing high-intensity exercise, having a rest, not necessarily doing the same intensity as you are for peak performance.
So has this inspired you to get back on your bike?
I got back on my bike a while ago. I'm cycling quite regularly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I cycle to the gym.
We're going to see you in the Olympics in 2028?
You won't see me at the Olympics. You might see me cycling by on the top of the hill.
I love that. Oh, well, Rachel, thank you so much for your question. I hope this cleared things up for you and that you're not going too hard in the gym now. And if you have a question, we love getting them. Please send them to thatrash@abc.net.au.
And we've got some feedback.
We sure do. So people have been sending in emails to thatrash@abc.net.au all the time, and we love getting them. But every now and again, someone takes the time to write out a note by hand. And that is what has happened recently. We got a message from Eleanor, a handwritten note. And I need people to understand that Norman has not been allowed to read this note. We have hidden it from him, and this is the first time he's hearing about it. And just to put your mind at rest, it's nothing to do with you either. It's just
No, I'm not interested anymore. Not because of my narcissism.
It was just so delightful that I just wanted to let you kind of hear this fresh along with everyone else. So, Eleanor writes, "Dear gentle person, a health conundrum and, like all good discussions, serendipitous. It's been 5 years now that I've aborted every cold or flu by 20 minutes of vigorous recorder playing. 2 sessions to be on the safe side. Even as last week, when it seemed I'd left it too late and sickness was imminent, I don't take any other medications. Eleanor is 76. What's going on? Is it the enhanced oxygen intake? The Scottish ballads? Would a trumpet be even more effective? Does she get a Nobel Prize?" And then she signs off, "Peace be robustly with you, Eleanor."
Well, she's blowing it out, clearly. Well done, Eleanor. We need to do a swabbing exercise of her recorder and see what's going there.
If she is blowing it all out, that thing must be crawling with all sorts of flus and pneumonia.
So Shelby's theory is that the next pandemic...
I wanted to put this to the test. I'm actually feeling fine, but still, I couldn't find a recorder, but I did find... You tell me if you know what this is.
Is that pen whistle? It's one of those whistles with the...
It's a melody pop. It tastes good, actually. It's strawberry flavored. So if you've got a piece of feedback you want to give us or a question,
sure. With our new theme. It's a work of art. See you next week.
See you then.
You've been listening to the Health Report from RN here on ABC News Radio. I'm Mandy Pressland. It is time for a news update, and in just over half an hour we'll have this week's Living Planet from Deutsche Welle. Eastern Standard Time is now 3 o'clock. In Central Australia it's 2:30, and in the West it's 1 o'clock.
You're listening to ABC News Radio.
Apology to the Indigenous community later today. Commissioner Michael Murphy says he'll be apologising for racial injustices over the past 154 years during a speech at the Gama Festival. As part part of a new anti-racism strategy. The Commissioner says the goal will be a 30% Indigenous workforce within the police force.
Looking at our recruitment strategies and challenging how we actually recruit people so we diversify and actually accept. We've got 12% Indigenous population in our workforce. The community is 31%, and that's our goal, to reflect the community too.
Meantime, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says aspirations for a better future for Indigenous Australians did not end with the defeat of the Voice referendum last year. The Prime Minister says his government will continue to work with First Nations leaders to shape a better future. Giving his address to the Garma Festival in East Arnhem Land, Mr Albanese says closing the gap must remain a priority. We can now bring you that speech.
I begin by acknowledging the people of the Yolngu Nation, their elders, leaders and families who have contributed so much to Australia. In particular, I acknowledge the Gumatj clan, whose lands we are meeting on today. And I thank Jawa for his incredibly generous comments and for his leadership. He is indeed a man of fire. I also acknowledge all my colleagues who are here with me today at Garma. We have the Education Minister, Jason Clare. We have the Social Services Minister, Amanda Rishworth. And we have your local member, Marion Scrimgeour, as well. In particular, though, I do want to acknowledge a couple of my colleagues. Linda Burney was born into an Australia that viewed her as second class, yet she has led a life of profound firsts.
Point 1 US
Sports, Mr. Show, that's okay. Catch up now at 2GB.com.
Round 22 action is back underway and it's all on the line for the Brisbane Broncos. Last year's grand finalists are on a serious slide and need to beat the Gold Coast Titans to keep their finals hopes alive. It's 0-0 with a couple of minutes gone in the first half. Meanwhile, West Tigers prop Stefano Utoikamanu has made a decision on his future, signing a 3-year deal with the Melbourne Storm from next season. Storm General Manager of Football Frank Benitez told the continuous call team they're delighted to get the deal over the line.
It was out of ourselves and the Bulldogs, and it's a 50-50. It has been, all week, and so to get the final call and say that he's coming, and he was pleasing. He's an exciting young forward.
In our NRLW, the Titans have defeated the Tigers 28-12, while the Knights won a thriller against the Raiders 26-20. Kaylee McEwen has made history as the only Aussie to win 4 individual gold medals at the Olympics after defending her 200-metre backstroke title from Tokyo. Simon Clark, Michael Matthews and Ben O'Connor are preparing to represent Australia quarter-finals despite going down to Greece 88-85. Australia progressing after Canada beat Spain. 5 minutes past 3, that is the latest news and sport.
Loyalty, homewares and outdoor furniture. Some exclusions apply. Free this weekend and enjoy the benefits straight away. We're looking forward to seeing you in store. Our doors open at 7 a.m. Flower Power, the garden people.
Big man, you know my favourite thing about winter? The sale on now at Lowe's. There's up to 50% off winter styles like selected fleece tops and trackies, including big men's, slashed to $19.95. Save $20. Select $95, save $20. So don't miss the huge winter sale on now at Lowe's.
Now at Harvey Norman, unbeatable deals on LG with big savings and bonus gift cards. Save $200 on LG French door fridge with ice and water, plus receive a bonus $240 Harvey Norman gift card. Upsize and save in the laundry with $200 off LG 10-kilo washer plus bonus $110 gift card. And king size deal on LG TV with AI. Save a huge $500 on 75-inch QLED plus bonus $150 gift card. Harvey Norman, best range, best brands, best prices guaranteed. Conditions apply.
Quality meat. Stapleton's Quality Meats have been supplying locals and businesses Sydney-wide since 1896 with the very best pasture-fed and free-range meats, poultry and now ready-eat meal options. Visit their family-owned and run stores in Kareela Village and Southgate, Sylvania, or online at stapletonsqualitymeats.com and use promo code 2GB for 20% off your first order.
Weather, Ben Fordham for breakfast, 5:30 weekdays on 2GB.
Sunny sunny this afternoon with light winds, tops of 19 degrees in the city, 20 in our west. Looking further ahead, it'll be mostly sunny tomorrow, possible shower Monday and Tuesday. Right now in the city, we've hit our top, 19 degrees. Humidity 58%. It's also 19 at Bankstown, 18 at Campbelltown, 17 at Gosford, 18 degrees Penrith, 17 Terry Hills. I'm Michael Packey. More news at 4 on your home of the Olympics, Sydney's 2GB. Their teeth now look like Hadley's.